Hey Archery Talk, this is Lucas, and today I've got my review for the PSE Sakario FDS. This is PSE's new speed bow. It's all carbon. There's a lot to talk about. Let's get into this right now. We're going to start with specs. This bow has an axle-to-axle length of 33 inches, a brace height of 5¼ inches, more on that in a little bit, a rated speed of 357 feet per second, and it's got a weight of 3.9 pounds with nothing on it. Overall, that's a super lightweight package, as you'd expect from a carbon bow from PSE. And the whole story about this bow is speed, speed, speed. This is, I believe, the fastest bow I've ever shot, I've ever tested, at least in my experience. I can't recall one that's ever achieved those numbers. We're going to dig more into that in a little while. But overall, it's an impressive piece of technology from PSE. It's the first bow from PSE I've been able to get my hands on in a few years. Super excited they were kind enough to send this over for me to play with for a little while. And let's also talk about the new FDS cam. This is, again, 1/2-inch draw length adjustability. It runs from 24.5 to 30 inches. So right now I am set up right at the max of this. I'm a 30-inch draw, so I'm using the 30-inch spot in this cam. And so I'm at the absolute peak of efficiency I'm going to get out of this bow. So if, for anyone looking for kind of speed results, you're going to kind of want to stay tuned for that one, because I've got the most aggressive setup I can have on this bow. The only real problem I had when I was setting up this bow was kind of the vanes touching on the rest arm on the bow here. The brace height being so short, 5¼ inches, it does not allow a lot of room between the nock and the fletchings. And so my fletchings at first were just kind of hitting the very, very edge of this thing. So I had to push this, the arrow rest in as far as it would go. This bow actually comes with the integrated arrow rest style in there, which is like a plate that came screwed on there. I had to take that off in order to get this arrow rest pushed in against the riser as much as I could to have room so the vanes wouldn't be kind of rubbing on the lift on the arm here of the arrow rest. It was an interesting problem I've never had, but I've also not usually shooting bows with brace heights that are 5¼ inches. That is a very compact and interesting brace height. PSE does say this bow has an effective brace height of 6½ inches just because of the cam design. So when you're at full draw, it feels like a bow that's more like 6½ inches than 5¼ and it's hard for me to tell you how much reality is in that statement. A bunch of brands kind of talk about their effective brace height rather than the actual measured brace height, but that's PSE's thoughts on this matter. When I'm shooting this bow, I do find that if I'm not paying attention, you could get a little bit of a string slap, especially if your arm is kind of not relaxed and the bow is kind of maybe canting inwards just a little bit. So I just had to pay attention with that one. And I've always been shooting this bow indoors for the time being with short sleeves. I've not played with this with bulky coats and things like that, which you might have for hunting season. So take that with a grain of salt. Again, anytime you're using a brace height this short, you might run into a problem like that from time to time. But I found, at least in my early shooting experience with this bow, that if I'm paying attention, then I don't have to worry about really catching on my clothes so far. Overall, I've got the pretty standard setup on this bow. I've got my 1/4-inch Hamsky peep. I've got my black gold sight. I've got a titanium archery product stabilizer on there, and a QAD arrow rest. And that's the basic package I've got on here. I have been enjoying shooting this thing with the stabilizer on here rather than just the stubby one that comes on. The bow is very lightweight, and I do like a little bit of weight out front to help me kind of steady the pins, especially when I shoot at longer distances. You're inside 20 yards for hunting distances, maybe not super important, but if you're shooting out at 40 yards, 50 yards, I think a little stabilization, at least in my opinion for this bow, helps me quite a bit just to kind of settle things down long range. The black kind of carbon riser looks fantastic in person, as you can probably tell. My only issue with this it's a kind of a textured paint, and I do find that like little scratches can show up fairly easily on that. I've not had this bow for a super long time yet. And you can just little dings and scratches kind of just mark them up. You can often rub them out, especially if you get a little bit of oil from your fingers in there, then it tends to kind of rub small imperfections back away. But just something to keep an eye out. I have not seen what this bow looks like with some of the camouflage patterns in person. I'm sure those will probably hide those little imperfections more, but black kind of will show off just about anything in my experience, but I really do like the way it looks like with a solid color like this. So I've been shooting this bow for a little while now. I've got maybe 200 arrows through the Sicario so far. And I wanted to run you through the draw cycle, at least in my experience. So I shot a video a little while ago to do just that. So it's time to talk draw cycle, as I mentioned, on the new PSE Sakario. And I'm not gonna lie, this was not the bow I was hoping to get from PSE this year. I'm typically not a giant speedbow fan, but PSE really wanted me to test this bow. And so I came in here with a little bit of skepticism because I do not love how speedbows draw. And this is not what I would call a buttery smooth draw, but it is not also what I was expecting. I was expecting something much more aggressive than what it is. It's definitely like a relatively stiff draw cycle, but it's not, realistically, it's not what I was expecting from a bow with a 357 foot per second IBO speed rating on there. It definitely feels like a fast bow, don't get me wrong. Like the Darden and the primes I just shot are much more kind of smooth shot feel bows, especially with their standard mods. And this bow more leans towards what those bows would feel like with their performance mods or their speed mods, and maybe even a little bit extra, judging by the extra rated speed anyway. But overall, it's kind of pleasantly surprised. I was really, I don't know, I don't want to say I came in with a bad attitude, again, just because my penchant to not love speedbows, but God, this was surprising. And, with the stabilizer on the front, it holds pretty well at full draw. It was a little, I want to say, like it was maybe not, I wouldn't say shaky, but I like it much better with like that 12-inch stabilizer in front with a few ounces of weight. It holds relatively nicely, 33-inch bow. And after the shot, relatively quiet. You can tell. Like everything about it feels fast when you let it go. It's a very nice, crisp sound. I wouldn't say I feel a great deal of vibration or anything like that when I'm holding the bow. I would say though, it feels, when you let it go, depending how, like if you've got a tight grip, it kind of feels like the bow gets a quick sharp push into your hand, but doesn't buzz, if that makes any sense. I don't know if I'm describing that properly. That's the feeling I get. But if you're holding a looser grip on the bow, which I like to do, when I'm shooting better, I usually have a looser grip on the bow. Then I don't really notice that so much. So if you're gripping it tight, then you kind of do feel that little snap. But I would not say it feels like it's vibration forward at all, and which is surprising considering it's a carbon bow that produces what I assume is going to be pretty fantastic speed, and we'll find that out in just a minute. But overall, the draw here, I'm going to let it down again. I've got this right now in the 85% let off mode. When I do the speed test, I'm going to test it in both the 85% and the 75% to see if there's a difference. But the 85, I'll tell you this right now, I do not like how it feels with the 75% setup on the let off position. It's way too aggressive for me. I feel like it constantly feels like it wants to jump for me. 85, I'm hog heaven. I feel like I could hold that bow up all day, which again, considering how fast this bow purports to be, that's pretty fantastic. But the draw itself, it's just, I was not expecting it to be kind of so linear. Usually when I get speed bows, I feel big humps in the valley to help generate that speed. And I'm not getting that as much as here, at least not as much as I was expecting. You definitely have to pull with some force, but there's no real hump. It just kind of rolls into the valley fairly nicely, which is surprising. And I'm very interested to see what the speed numbers are like. So I'm going to go set the chrono up right now and test this thing with a couple of different arrows, and I'll report back to you, in probably about 5 seconds. All right, as I mentioned, it's time to talk speed, and I'm guessing that's why a lot of you are still watching this video. I have this bow set up with 30¼ inches of draw length, 70 pounds of draw weight. This bow did max out at 72. I had to back it off a little bit. And I used a 350 grain arrow with the 85% let off position, and I saw speeds of 353 and 352 feet per second. I have never, in all of my years of testing bows with a chronograph, seen the speed start with 3.5 before. That is completely new territory for me. I am blown away by the speed of this bow, especially because of really how the draw cycle felt. Again, it definitely feels like a fast bow. It's not a super easy draw, but I was not super confident it was going to have a speed starting in the 350s. But 353 is just remarkable for me. I also, as I mentioned, tested this with a 75% let-off position, and I got exactly the same speeds. So maybe somebody with an engineering background can explain to you why the speeds were the same despite the let-off position change. I'm guessing it has something to do with, maybe getting about an extra 1/4 inch or so of draw length, when you're in the 85% spot than you are when you're in a 75% spot, but that's just an uneducated guess. I should also say I shot this with a 455 grain arrow. That's my typical hunting arrow, and I still saw absolutely remarkable speeds of 313 feet per second every time I shot it. That's truly surprising for me. 313 with my hunting arrow at 455 grains. I was really blown away by that number. I think I would actually consider moving up to a heavier arrow just to help maybe with broadhead flight. Although maybe some of you out there can tune broadheads better than I can when you're flying over 300 feet per second. But I find fixed blades, in my limited experience, don't maybe fly as well for me when you're pushing 300, and let alone 313 with this bow setup. But no matter how you slice it, this bow is wicked fast. The fastest I have ever tested as far as I can recall. And I'm truly surprised by how it felt, and the draw with the performance and all that. That's a few bows in a row that kind of math doesn't really make sense to me. But I think maybe this bow's secret is that short brace height at just 5 1/4 inches. That's about an inch shorter brace height than most hunting bows are going to give you, and that's going to help maybe lessen how aggressive the cams have to be to produce that speed. Because if you wanted a bow to produce 357 feet per second with a 6 or 6 1/4 inch brace height, I think those cams would have to be a lot more aggressive, and you'd really feel that maybe that big hump to get over before you hit the wall. But as it is, it's a pretty impressive package. I'm pleasantly surprised over this. I mentioned this was not my bow of choice from PSE this year, but they were, I think, eager to prove me wrong, and I think they've done that. Really impressed with the overall, not only the speed of this bow, which is, I don't know if I've ever shot a bow like that fast before or will ever do it again, but with the feel they managed to get out of it. Again, it's still an aggressive bow. Don't make any mistake about that, especially if you get out of that 85% spot and move into 80 or 75, then it becomes a whole different animal. But as it stands, I don't know, I couldn't be happier with it. I can't wait to see how it competes against all the other bows I've got this year. I've got 1 or 2 more coming in. I'll have the multi-bow shootout coming up. I'll have other reviews of the other bows and a bunch of other videos related to all the 2026 hunting bows that I can get my hands on. Archery talk, I think that's all I got for you for now. Please like, share, and subscribe. Helps the channel an awful lot, and we'll see you soon.